Hello, all you film freaks and movie maniacs out there. My name is Nolan Carr, and I'd like to welcome you to the go-to podcast for all things cinema. But before you can ask any questions, just sit back, relax, as I present to you a Straw Lane Studio Productions Critiquing with Carr. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another great edition of the show. As always, if you enjoy episodes such as this one, do us a favor by subscribing on YouTube, following us on the audio platforms, clicking that thumbs up or like button so you can tell us you enjoy these episodes on those platforms, turning on post notifications on those platforms so you can stay up to date when episodes release, as well as clicking at share arrows so you can continue to do the podcast with all your friends and family. Also, if you want other ways of staying up to date with the show, do us a favor by following us on Instagram at Critiquing with Carr. I say all that because on this week's great edition of the show, this amazing edition of the show, we're talking about my top favorite films I watched so far for Volume 7. And with that being said, my film freaks and cinephiles, let's begin. Coming in at the bottom spot on my list, number 10, is Paths of Glory. Although the overarching story about the war is interesting to me, as well as the story of the movie, I don't quite care for it in all honesty. Sure, Kirk Douglas, George McCready, and Joe Turkel were good in the movie. Everyone else in this movie was forgettable. I found myself often rewinding periodically to better understand what just happened after losing interest. This is certainly not Stanley Kubrick's best work when looking at his filmography. Coming in at number 9 on this list is The Great Dictator. Although I enjoyed this movie much more than Modern Times, it wasn't my favorite for what I hope is understandable and obvious reasons. Although the comedic presentation of Hitler, or who we assume is a spoof on Hitler, was funny at first, all the pratfalls and other non-physical comedy wears off quickly and start to detract from the overall story in my opinion. The supporting cast for the most part was forgettable, and out of the 3 Chaplin films I've seen so far, this wasn't his worst performance. Coming in at number 8 on this list was Inglourious Basterds. To tell you the truth, I loved Pulp Fiction, I love Django Unchained, but not this movie. Christoph Waltz knocks it out of the park again, but he was the only enjoyable character. I thought that Brad Pitt's accent for this movie was terrible, and Mike Myers wasn't believable as an English general, just to name 2 things. I felt as though breaking the movie into chapters did nothing for the movie in terms of quality. This is probably the worst Tarantino film I've seen of his, and won't watch it again, which is unfortunate because Quinn always gets a lot of great actors to play in his movies, but not even that could help this one at the end of the day. Coming in at number 7 on this list was Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Like its predecessor in this series, this was an interesting film in this volume. For some reason, I had a good time watching this movie from a story progression standpoint. I enjoyed that this movie was more of a Gwen story, but I didn't like how often I would lose interest and have to rewind to catch up. The soundtrack, artistic design, color palette, and new Spider Gang were good choices. I also like this version of Miles in the movie more than the version of him in Into the Spider-Verse when comparing the two of them. Coming at number 6 on this list was Aliens. Although it's not completely great, it is so much better in my opinion than Alien. I enjoy Sigourney Weaver's performance so much more in this one. The aliens were much more menacing, and the crew members were more likable from a viewer standpoint. It was just a better movie overall. Like some films on this list, this movie was unfortunately on the longer side and made it harder to stay watching it at certain parts. Nevertheless, it was a great movie. As we approached the top half of Volume 7's rankings, coming in at number 5 was The Shining. To tell you the truth, I had always heard about this movie. I know the legendary status it holds in the world of cinema and not just a certain genre like thriller or horror, but I never got around to seeing it before starting this podcast. But boy, was I certainly pleased. Although Shelley Duvall, in my opinion, was the worst of the main characters, Jack Nicholson proves why he's one of the best actors of our lifetime, and the little kid playing Danny held up his weight as well. I thought that the rapid change from calm at the beginning of the movie to serious high levels of suspense helped make the movie more entertaining and put me on the edge of my seat the whole time. Although the backstory of how the late and great Shelley Duvall was treated on set by Mr. Kubrick tarnishes my overall opinion of the film, I still think it's great, the score was great, the acting was pretty good overall, and it certainly holds up to this day. Coming in at number 4 on this list was The Dark Knight Rises. It's hard to succeed in a movie like The Dark Knight, but somehow they find a way to get close to being better. The cast and crew do a phenomenal job with this movie. Christian Bale, Anne Hathaway, and Tom Hardy do a top-tier job. I think that the supporting and background cast compared just as well as the supporting cast in the prior movie. I feel as though Bane was way more intimidating than the Joker if there were ever a hot take needed to be said, even if Heath Ledger acted way better. This was a pretty good film, but The Dark Knight is and always will be better. Taking home the bronze medal for this list of films reviewed is Avengers Infinity War. Unlike the 2 successors on this list, you know what the film is about based off the title, but more importantly, who's involved. Regardless of knowing about the Avengers, this movie still holds up almost 10 years after its release. The action, special effects, and plot progression are top tier. The comedy between Thor and Rocket Raccoon towards Quill was entertaining, since I feel as though the comedy in Marvel movies is always a little bit more forced, particularly with Iron Man. Nevertheless, this movie was great, and James Brolin was phenomenal as the villainous Thanos.
Coming in second place on this list is Sunset Boulevard. A few years ago, when I first watched it, after hearing about it so much, I couldn't get enough of it and loved every minute. Well, let's just say the feeling was very mutual and more this time watching it, particularly for the podcast. Beyond the slow set of events leading up to Joe Gillis parking his car in Norma's garage, the movie was perfect from start to finish. If this movie's successor wasn't in this set of films, Sunset Boulevard would have unequivocally been number one. And finally, coming in at number one on my list of films I watched so for Volume 7 was Witness for the Prosecution. From start to finish, this film has great acting, the pacing is well done, so you're not asking for more, and the actors get enough out of their roles each time they're on screen. The drama was entertaining, and it kept you interested in what was going to happen the whole time, but especially at the end. I had no real reservations about this film and was really excited for the movie after being immediately hooked from the first 5 minutes of the film. I will certainly watch it again and would probably recommend it to just about anyone willing to listen. With that being said, what do you think? Do you agree with everything I said, or are there some things, if not everything, that you completely disagree with? Regardless, down below in the comment section, provide your rankings of the films I just talked about for Volume 7. As always, if you've enjoyed episodes such as this one, do us a favor by subscribing on YouTube, following us on the audio platforms, clicking a thumbs up or like button so you can tell us you enjoy these episodes, turning on post notifications so you can stay up to date when episodes released on those platforms, as well as clicking at share out so you can continue to grow the podcast to tell your friends and family. Also, if you want other ways of staying up to date with the show, do us a favor by following us on Instagram at Critiquing with Carr. And with that being said, my film freaks and cinephiles, take care and happy viewing.